All right, let's think about the increase in variable costs for new season foods and for the cornstarch market. As we do these events in the side-by-side competitive firm and market framework, if it's a cost increase, we generally are going to be starting our analysis in the firm panel, and then the what's happening at the firm feeds back into what happens to the market supply curve. On the other hand, if we're doing a demand event, increase or decrease, then we start with the market, and what's happening in the market feeds back into the firms. All right, so this is a cost event, so we're going to start our analysis in the space of the firm. And I'm going to use blue for the short run and um, red for the long run. And let's suppose marginal costs rise, and by that's supposed to be a straight line, by a constant amount at every given level of output. And if that's the case, notice that average costs also will rise by a constant amount at every single level of output. And I apologize for my weak drawing ability. It's even weaker than usual as I'm sitting in a rocking chair because my son is using the office. And anyway, so notice what happens. I've tried to draw it so that the upward shift in marginal cost is two of these checks in the grids. This is easier with graph paper. Anyway, so that's what it looks like at the firm level. Notice I've not drawn in any market price change because of this event yet, but that's what's coming next. And the key to doing these problems is to shift up the market supply curve in the short run by as close to exactly the amount um, as the increase in firm costs as you can. So notice that firm costs jumped up by two of these checks, whether a dollar a unit or whatever it might be, 20 cents a unit, doesn't matter the units, but the firm costs go up. Well, the market supply in a competitive industry is just the supply curve of it's the aggregation of all the marginal cost curves of all the firms in the industry. So it's the industry marginal cost. So if for every firm in the industry, costs went up by a dollar a unit, then costs for the market would go up by a dollar a unit. And that's the key. If you get that right, you're going to get these problems right. If you get it wrong, you're going to miss part of these problems. All right, so now we've shown what's happened. All that's left to us is to draw the new equilibrium prices and quantities. Again, my drawing is even worse than it usually is. Fortunately, I've got these grid lines. So the new level where market marginal cost and price are equal is going to be here at small q for firm level output Q1. And notice that the new average cost curve for the firm at that level of output, the average costs are ATC1. So that firm went from breaking even in the long run equilibrium case, earning zero economic profit, to a situation where that firm is losing money. Price in the market goes up, P1, we'll call it quite imaginatively, and big Q1. So that's the short run effect that this cost increase is going to lead to a price rise in the short run, but the rise in price is not going to be enough to cover the full amount of the cost increase. Instead, because the demand curve is downward sloping, the increase in cost, the reduction in supply, remember we think right left, but marginal costs have gone up, supply has fallen. The price rises, but not by enough to cover the full jump in costs. So notice that firms are making a loss. Average total costs in the new situation are greater than marginal costs. Now, in the long run, what's going to happen? I'm going to switch to red. And when we finish the short run case, either firms are making a profit and there's going to be entry over the long run, or firms are making a loss and there's going to be exit over the long run. In this case, firms are making a loss. We assume that the events causing this cost increase are here to stay, and maybe they are, maybe they're not. But let's just assume they're long-lived increases in cost. Well, in that case, some of these firms in this industry are going to say, hey, we can make more money in our next best opportunity in the economy. So that's going to cause exit. So if I want to annotate this graph, this shift in supply is because variable costs went up. But and that's the short run event. But over the long run, uh, there's going to be exit until the survivors break even. We know that in the long run, um, the price has to rise all the way to where the survivors can break even, all the way to where price and average total costs are equal again. So in the long run, we know what's going to happen. There's going to be further reduction in supply in the long run that's supposed to be due to the left. And this is because of long run, gosh, exit. That's supposed to be it. EXIT. And my stylus is having all sorts of problems. So in the long run, industry price is going to rise so that the full amount of costs are passed on to consumers. But remember, that might be several years. It's a long, long process to um, before the long run adjustment can happen. And then, of course, price will rise to P2. This was P1, remember? I guess to be consistent, that should be blue because that's the short run increase. And there we have it. So we see our prediction. The article that I asked you to read shows this increase in costs to firms, in variable cost to firms, an increase in price of the output, but not by enough to offset the full rise in costs. That's exactly the situation that's described in the article. And so firms are losing money. That fits the events of the article just to a T. In the long run, we would expect that some firms in this industry would exit over time. So there we have it.